If you realize that the mini apps are a means to an end, it's okay. If you think that you're gonna build $1 billion company through mini apps, you're basically lost.
I think the world mini app marketplace is probably a better place for the time being than thinking about like Farcaster if you're trying to reach the masses,
Definitely.
right?
This transaction that was settled on the blockchain, $75 million oil and gas transaction that was executed through blockchain tokenization. This is important for Latin America because it happened in Latin America. Why will an energy company in Latin America need something like this? Because they need to move their money faster. I think that we're gonna see in the next 3 to 5 years a lot of growth in stablecoins, and at the same time, I think that there's gonna be a lot of regulation trying to stop that. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze what's happening in crypto in Latin America. I'm Mav, co founder and CEO of Bando, and I'm with my great friend Kush, founder of Odisea Labs. Kush, how's everything, man? How are you? I see that you are traveling again. Where are you now?
I'm good, man. I'm in Ecuador right now. I got my mate microphone set up as well, so feels good to be in South America.
Yeah, man. Seems like you've just been in Argentina a couple of days ago. So
Yeah,
you
it's
brought
actually a
the.
Uniswap branded little mate cup.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
saw those on Twitter that
yeah,
they
yeah,
were
yeah.
super fun, and everyone still's everyone still is super hyped about the Uniswap mansion because that thing was crazy.
Next level, next level. Yeah. So, but man, it's been I feel like macro markets, crazy, but we were just commenting before that actually things are relatively quiet in Latin American crypto scene. So
Yeah, I think that actually, I think that one of the most exciting things this week for crypto in Latin America was the essay that we wrote about the stablecoin sandwich. It's just amazing research, and it's really exciting to see how subscribers to the newsletter are increasing and increasing and increasing, and they are smart subscribers. It's not like regular random people, but people from the Solana Foundation, Eigen, Uniswap. So yeah,
lots of
Bitso.
investors as well. Like we've been getting a lot of outreach from some of the industry's biggest investors saying, "Hey, how can I allocate into the region?" So that's been really fun too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that there's a big opportunity here. We are continue exploring it, and part of basically that also obviously go and subscribe to the newsletter. It's the best research about crypto in Latin America, and I want to start this Frontera episode talking about the base batch. We're also gonna talk about a tokenized transaction settled on the blockchain for $75 million. Uh, our thesis that stablecoins that countries, emerging market countries are gonna be worried about stablecoins is materializing every day a little bit more. But let's start with the base batch. You've been leading this with the base team. Tell us a little bit of what was the base batch demo day. How was it? Tell me a little bit more about it, man.
Yeah, so this was a program that was put on by Base, Odisea, and Hashed Emergent. And it was actually just a really well thought out program with how builders, and I think the key insight for all the audience here is like, this was one of the programs that I think was incredibly well thought out because it started off as a build-a-thon and a hackathon, and then it went into an incubation program, and then we had the final demo day. So we had Balaji there, we had Jesse from Base, we had people from Coinbase Ventures, all participating in this activation, which I thought was just like really really fun, right? And essentially, what we did was we had people come up, give a 2-minute pitch on what they're working on, and then answer some questions. But the fun thing is you were on the other side of that, so you guys actually participated. So tell me about it from your side of the house.
Well, from my perspective, I think that these type of programs are really useful to validate thesis that we have as a product. For example, I'm going to tell you a story about serendipity creating a company. So our first client is MiniPay. They have more than 7 million wallets and they are on Celo, right? Farcaster, Farcaster launched on Celo, so the Celo team approached us and told us, guys, if you create a mini app, you're gonna be able to we'll feature you, blah blah blah. We brought that to our engineering team, and I mean, building a mini app is not like a simple fit, right? But we've been building Bando for more than 6 months, our backend, and actually deploying the mini app took us 6 hours, literally 6 hours of two of our engineers, of Luis, our CTO, and Celso, our front end engineer. And we deployed on Firecaster, and we didn't see a lot of traction. But the fact that we were able to deploy a mini app in like such a short notice validated our thesis on the distribution model. And now we are approaching different wallets, some of the top wallets of the world, and we are seeing that implementing our infrastructure there basically takes us. We're about to launch in like a really big wallet, and this time instead of 6 hours took us 30 minutes. We just needed to adjust a couple of designs, do something in the JSON manifest, and that was it, right? So in my perspective, the thing is that the base batch was a great way to validate that's really a thing, and that there's appetite for the product that we're building. Also, I think that the demo day is kind of hard because you have 2 minutes, a couple of questions, and that's it. And it was also funny because one of the judges, uh, I met that guy in East Denver grabbing an Uber, and it's that thing about you need to be there. And afterwards, I texted him like, dude, super funny that we met there. Also, he was the guy that asked me the questions. So I think that it's a story about when you are building something, you just need to like put your heart and soul and hope for the best, because it's gonna be really random the way that you succeed.
Totally. No, fully agree with that. I wanted to double click on like the mini app thing, because World has their mini apps. There's Farcaster mini apps. I've heard so many other people working on these mini app things. Like, you
Everyone,
as
yeah.
a direct to consumer builder, how do you think about those distribution channels, like through these mini apps? I mean, it's crazy that, it took you 6 hours to build the first one and 30 minutes to build the next one. It sort of feels like we need a mini app aggregator, to be honest, because
Those
Coinbase
are
Wallet is going to be
wallets.
launching mini apps. Exactly, right. Exactly. But yeah, I'm curious how you think of, like, for you as a direct to consumer sort of like play,
Yeah. Well, our play is not direct to consumer.
or like
Uh,
the infrastructure to, enable like people to reach
okay,
consumers more
yeah,
easily, right?
I see. Yeah, definitely. So the thing that we realized is that if we wanted to be just direct to consumer, for example, when we launched Bando, it was basically our community, and we had a couple of hundreds of visits every day. And we launched with MiniPay, and we now have tens of thousands of visits every week. So our distribution just went up massively. And our thesis is that those mini apps are gonna be dead. A lot of mini apps are gonna die, and that's the natural way of basically biology. When there's a really rich forest, if you plant a lot of trees, most of them will die. I know this because of basically logic. And when I studied engineering and sustainable development, I remember that in some reforestation projects, you needed to plant 3 trees to make sure that one survived. So that's nature. It's the same on startups. So answering how I see mini apps, I think that as a builder, we need to think about distribution, and then how to scale and commoditize that distribution. So mini apps are our first step, and our next step is making sure that the wallet integrates us as a spending mechanism. And I'm really bullish on this because looking at most of the mini apps, the most used mini apps right now in Farcaster, most of them are useless crypto stuff. Like, I don't know, there's one that is games, and there's one that it's airdropping random tokens, and people love those, but I think that they are not real use cases in the long term. Spending your crypto is. So I think that this trend of mini apps, it was started by Telegram, basically ton mini apps, and now it's scaling. And I think that if you realize that the mini apps are a means to an end, it's okay. If you think that you're gonna build $1 billion company through mini apps, you're basically lost, I think. How do you see this trend?
I see so many people working on mini apps, and I see so many people trying to be that space where mini apps come to and are built on. I Even the notion of it being like a mini app is hamstrings a little bit of its potential, right? Because it says like, listen, this is not like a fully blown product, and
It's a
it's meant to
lesser
be.
app.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an ephemeral product that you come to and then you leave and then that's it, right? And I think I haven't seen any. I mean, I think people are like trying to do little games and little experiences, but it can be this like place where you start getting into the full offering.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
So
it. And it's a place that you get closer to a wallet team. If you're
yeah,
successful as a mini app, the probability of scaling your product is higher, right? But yeah, a lot were there. There were a lot of mini apps in the base batch.
yeah, there
Most of
were a
them,
lot of
right?
mini apps. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say most, but like around 50% around that. But I think it's just because of the emphasis with the Coinbase wallet now wanting to do more mini apps.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Farcast are doing mini apps. But I think it's like why this matters to Frontera, what we talk about is because I think about distribution channels and like World, for example, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users from Latin America using like the World mini app store today. And a lot of people are trying to figure out like, okay, is this where we want to be placing our bets? I think the World mini app marketplace is probably a better place for the time being than thinking about like Farcaster if you're trying to reach the masses,
Definitely.
right? Yeah.
By
So
far, because world people are retail users and Farcaster are degens. And
degens
degens
from
want
like New
to,
York usually, right?
yeah, SF and New York degens versus
Yeah,
people in the tamales line using world that they want to spend their UBI,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Dude, let's talk about the first news that we have, the one that I was mentioning. This transaction that was settled on the blockchain, $75 million oil and gas transaction that was executed through blockchain tokenization. Actually, before recording, it took us like 5 minutes to understand what was this because there's a lot of buzzwords and there's a lot of, yeah, I don't know, clickbait, I think, in this news. So we want to bring you the real meat, the real thing. And this is what happened. So there's an oil and gas operation that is running, producing. It's a generating asset. So it's not like a future project nor something like that. It's a real facility and it's producing energy today. So the thing that they did is that they tokenized equity and debt, and then they made a transaction to settle that equity and debt of this facility through the blockchain, through stablecoins. So why this is important? I think that this is important because for Latin America, because it happened in Latin America. And why will an energy company in Latin America need something like this? Because they need to move their money faster. Maybe investors could be from the US, they could be from the UAE, it could be European investors. And if they move money through the blockchain, it's going to be faster and it's also going to be less expensive because you didn't need to have the intermediaries of different banks. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I see super relevant is that this is the convergence of two big trends that we've been seeing in the last years. First, real world assets, and then stablecoins. And that sounds like a match made in heaven. And why real world assets? Because the part of tokenizing debt and equity is putting a real world on chain, and that's basically the definition of a real world asset. And what imagine this, Kush, imagine that you have a real world asset and then you do the settlement using a regular bank. It would be like
Horrible.
having bits. Yeah, it would be like having bits and then frying them and saying that you're eating a salad, right? So this is the convergence of these two trends, and I think that's the main thing that I want to note.
I mean, what's it? I don't know what the process is like in Mexico, but in Guatemala, where I'm from, you saw, we bought some land 3 years ago, and 3 years later, the transaction has not settled. 3 years later, that's
What?
insane. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So again, this
What?
is like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's because of the bureaucracies and legal documents and so on and so forth. Like, I don't know if you have any like insights on how long this would take in Mexico,
Hmm.
but like, give me a rough
Months.
number of months.
At
Let's say
least
months.
months.
Yeah, yeah. So like doing a transaction of this type in Latin America can take months, if not years, right? And so this is where like leapfrogging is just so freaking exciting. Like we didn't go through the message phase. Like we've talked about this before, right? We went straight from calling through landlines to WhatsApp, basically, right? We never went through the messaging phase, the SMS phase, really in Latin America. It was like kind of,
Yeah.
but we like majority adoption happened through WhatsApp. And so the same thing is going to happen with RWAs because there is a much bigger pain point for these types of transactions to happen in the region. And they just make way more sense. Imagine trying to process $75 million. And the Phoenix owners or representatives, discussed the fact that usually they were able to bypass like traditional financial systems, and this was just much more efficient, and so on. So, and it's cool that this is happening in Latin America. This is the first transaction of this type to happen in the world, sort of an energy acquisition of this size and magnitude to happen in the world, and of course it happened in Latin America because it's like doing this otherwise would be such a pain.
Yeah. And just to put some names on the people that did this, it's Phoenix Energy, and they used something called the Global Settlement Network. Uh, I don't know. It's really interesting to see because also these are not like crypto. I cannot say if they are crypto native products or not, but they are not in the crypto lore, right? And that's so bullish because the crypto lore today is, I don't know, people in Cannes and New York partying, while in Latin America we're settling $75 million transactions and everything cool with New York and Cannes parties, right? I love those, but I mean, I rather have these things in Latin America.
Yeah, that's actually something that's happening this week, right? CAN and ECC. I don't know. A lot of people have been asking, like, "Are you going to CAN? Are you going to CAN?" And no, I'm definitely not going to CAN. But I think it's because I have no interest in personally going to CAN right now, right? Like maybe at some point in my life I'll want to go to CAN. But I'm curious, like, why aren't you in CAN?
Well, the first thing because traveling is it's just such a high opportunity cost. We need to focus, and I'm traveling in a couple of weeks, so I'd rather be in my house, in my studio,
Locked
working
in.
on Bando and Espacio Crypto, yeah, locked in. And also something that made me, I don't know, opened my eyes was that I was talking with a guy, with an investor in East Denver, and he told me, "Are you going to Cannes?" And I thought, dude, it's super far away, it's super expensive. I mean, every trip that I get is it costs us, right? It's not like my venture capital firm or product company is sponsoring me the travel. And he told me, and I told him, no, I don't think I will go. And I asked, are you gonna go? The guy said, the thing is that I want to go to the south of France. Obviously, bro. Also, I mean, if your huge VC is sponsoring
Who
it,
doesn't?
yeah, like let's go, let's have wine and European summer, right? But yeah, and then again, everything cool with that, everything cool with that, but the conference circuit can be overwhelming. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to sound cringy either. I mean, conferences are great, I love those, but we you cannot go to all conferences. You need to pick your fights.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's like Dev Connect, for example. It's like obviously you're gonna go to Dev Connect because it's in Latin America. Like there's a big focus on the region and so on, right? But like I don't know, Can just feels very out there, and I don't think super high signal for people like you and I that are actually just trying to think about, okay, how do we make more multi-million
Yeah,
dollar transactions happen on chain? Yeah.
yeah. Dude, let's keep moving. I'm I'm gonna talk about Turkey. Turkey is not Latin America, but it's an emerging market. So Cointelegraph reported that Turkey will require crypto platforms to verify source and purpose of transfers. Okay, that's okay. Who cares about that? KYC, we need that. The important thing, will impose withdrawal delays and limit stablecoin transactions to $3,000 daily and $50,000 every month. You and I, we've been talking about how stablecoins could be infinite selling pressure for fiat currencies. And why are we looking at Turkey right now? The first thing is that look at this statistic. It says Turkey between April 2023 and March 2024 last year, more than 4%. If you make a comparison between the GDP and the amount of stablecoin buys and volume in Turkey, was 4%. 4% of the GDP was bought to stablecoins. What does this mean? This means that 4% of the GDP was dumped, and somebody buy stablecoins, buy US dollars. And what happened to the Turkish lira FX during April 2023 and March 2024? Well, we have
Down only.
this terrible chart. March 2023, it was 5 cents 5 cents per lira, right? $5 cents per lira. 1 year later was April 2024, 3 cents. So basically, it went down 40%. And it's really, I mean, this, you cannot unsee this. Like this, there's a massive drop, specifically between May 2023 and July 2024, 2023. Like in 1 month, it went from 5 cents to 3 cents. So basically almost lost 50% of the purchasing power, while 4% of the GDP was going to buy stablecoins.
Yeah.
I mean, we cannot unsee this.
Yeah.
It's validating our thesis.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we've been talking a lot about like, do stable coins, how do stable coins impact local FX markets? And I think that, especially, after seeing this, is like there's sort of, what is the causation behind this? Because I think what stablecoins essentially do is they just like amplify FX markets, right? That
Yeah,
are, I think, exogenous to the stablecoin, if that makes sense, right? So the Turkish lira was already going down only, and then you have stablecoins that just enable and accelerate that down only nature of the stablecoin, of the local currency, in this case the lira, and therefore it just will accelerate the downfall of those local currencies, right? Which is just like the natural order of things, just playing out essentially, right? It just creates like more gravitational downward pressure,
yeah,
and I think that's like, but okay, well, if it's not stable coins, then maybe it'll just be like people will buy Bitcoin, right? There's other ways for people to get exposure to, and from what I gather, in fact, I have some good friends who handle a lot of like P2P markets in Turkey, and they've told me some really crazy stories. Like they take duffel, bags full of lira, and then they get USDT in exchange for that, and so I think that all I'll say is like it's going to be really hard for governments, I think, to try to control these like permissionless stable coin transfers, frankly. So, yeah, how do you think this impacts Latin America? Because I think generally, like where a lot of this, like what's most interesting about this podcast, last time we talked about Korea, for example, and like how that impacts local stable coins. So, how do you think
yeah.
this news sort of comes back to the most important region for crypto in the world?
Look, I think that this chart is really telling about this story. So, this is the chart that I was just mentioning. Which percentage of the GDP between April 2023 and March 2024 was transacted through stablecoins? So, that was basically selling pressure of the local currency for stablecoins. Turkey is by far the largest. That is 4.25%, something like that. Then it's Thailand, Georgia, the United States, obviously. And the thing is that then is Brazil, is the first Latin American country in this chart that is less than, I would say, 0.25% of the GDP. Who is the first Latin American country looking to have capital controls on stablecoins? Brazil,
Brazil, yeah.
because they have the highest selling pressure right now. Then it's Argentina in this chart. And I think that we all know the situation in Argentina, like terrible depreciation. Then it's Colombia and Mexico right at the end. So out of, I don't know, this might be like 20 countries, four are in Latin America. So how does this impact? I think that we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years a lot of growth in stablecoins, and at the same time I think that there is going to be a lot of regulation trying to stop that. And Kush, I don't know, I'd love to bounce this idea with you, because I'm not sure how I feel about this, because in the depths of my heart I'm a libertarian and I say like let people trade, but also I'm a realist person. And if this happens, basically a lot of people are going to get hurt because their local currency are going to be, it's going to be smashed. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, this is a common story that's played out in other countries, right? So, for example, like Ecuador, where I currently am, they went through a dollarization phase where they went from their local currency to then dollars, and it's. I think what this says to me is two things. So, one, we need to democratize access to these so people can have exposure to these types of investment vehicles, and also make sure that there's sufficient education around, okay, what's going on here, because I think it could be really harmful, right? And oftentimes it's, the reality is a lot of people, that oftentimes are hit the the worst by these fluctuations in FX markets aren't the really privileged class. It's usually people who
Yeah.
are the most disenfranchised, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, it's not a very clear solution to me, other than making sure that as many people have access to these types of like alternative investments. How do you think about it? Like, I mean, it's sort of it's kind of a complex problem, right? Because there's like massive market forces driving, say, like the downward movement of these currencies, but at the same time, how do you make sure that people have as little exposure to that shift?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really hard question, and it's a really hard macro question, and macro questions are answered in decades. Like, is that meme of doing that? Our plan is measured in generations, right? Uh, it's a really hard one. I think that we are tending towards that story where there is a massive dollarization of the world thanks to stablecoins. And yeah, it can be a philosophical debate, but in Latin America, we love more facts than philosophy because we need to be like sharp to these topics. So I think, look, from a startup perspective, it's a huge opportunity because the market will just keep expanding. So if you want to make a generational company, payment stablecoins might be the way. So yeah, let's keep reporting how this trend unfolds. And the let's pass to the final two news really fast. The first one, following up on the story of Melius, this Brazilian company that bought Bitcoin. You want to talk about this, like the equity, the price of the stock?
Yeah, well, they essentially, they're now the biggest holders of Bitcoin. So they just bought 275 additional Bitcoins for $28 million. They hold nearly 600 Bitcoin, and they are the largest public Bitcoin holder in Latin America now. So that is, yeah, I mean, and it's, the price is sort of reflected, and the sort of the reward for them has been that the market is essentially 2x their stock. And I think this is a trend that isn't going to go away. Obviously, there's a bit of a fad here, but generally, I think that the takeaway for the audience is that, and it relates to our last point as well. People are seeking alternative ways of preserving value, even at the corporate level. So one thing I was just chatting about recently with some friends is how exciting the opportunity is that like trillions of dollars are going to come on chain, basically, right, around the world.
Yeah.
And we were discussing this last time too. Is how, imagine like being the facilitator for ensuring that Melius can hold, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. So it's just bullish.
Yeah, and to tell the whole story, so Melius is a Brazilian company that is like coupons in Brazil.
Nothing
So
to do with
their
crypto.
value, nothing to do with crypto. Their value says discount coupons and cashback in hundreds of stores online. So that's their product. They have like a Chrome extension. You can buy at Amazon with 2% cashback and a lot of different things. So basically, I think it's something like uh, a gift card business, and they are a public company in Brazil. On March the 6th, they bought they allocated 10% of their treasury to Bitcoin. Then they raised $78 million to buy more Bitcoin, and this week they bought 28.6 million dollars in Bitcoin. So let's see what happened to the stock price. On March the 6th, basically the price of the stock was around of 3.47 Brazilian reals per stock. Then after the Bitcoin buy, today the stock has appreciated twice, has increased twice in price. At its peak, it went three times higher to 10.55 Brazilian real. So basically, it's the MicroStrategy play. A business that is not like incredible. It could be in a really crowded space. What's their strategy to go like to increase the stock price? Become a proxy of Bitcoin, right?
Yep.
So I don't know. Also, the Brazilian stock exchange is really interesting because It's a really like it's the most advanced market in Latin America, the Brazilian stock market. So yeah, Michael Saylor, there are a lot of MicroStrategy clones now. There's one for Solana, there's one for ETH, and now there's one in Brazil.
Game on. Game on. Let's see more of this.
Dude, and tell me about it. You just were in Argentina. Tell me about the ETH house of Argentina. What the hell
Yeah.
is this?
Yeah, so ETH Argentina, which is a local community in Argentina, is opening up this sort of ETH house in the run up to DevConnect. I think we're going to see a lot more of this happening over the course of the coming months, right, in the run up to DevConnect. But yeah, I think ETH Argentina is essentially creating a space. It's similar to Crecimiento. It was a Crecimiento the other day, and there were hundreds of people there just hacking away. And I think having more spaces for people to come together and build and so on, I think is super exciting. So yeah, I'm looking forward. Like I'm sure we'll get to visit it. They did in partnership with ETH LATAM and ETH Kipu and Bidlers. So yeah, ETH LATAM's local Ethereum community in the region. We're actually gonna have Romy, who is one of the co-founders of ETH LATAM, come in and talk to us a little bit about what's cooking.
I haven't been to Argentina yet.
I'm so excited. I'm gonna take you to your first asado.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Long casados. But man, please, how does this compounds with Crecimiento? Are they competing? Are they partnering? Like, do as a crypto industry, do we need two houses in Argentina?
I think we need hundreds of houses. Um,
Mm, not
yeah, I mean,
sure.
I think the okay, hundreds is an exaggeration, maybe, but I do think that this movement of acceleration of frontier technologies, I think, needs to be spread far and wide. And I know sometimes like this space feels like crowded and there's blah blah competition and so forth. I'm just people literally don't care about crypto outside of the 2,000 people on crypto Twitter, right? And so having more spaces where people to come together and learn and educate, I think is really important. I think Crecimiento has opened up and was like a big paradigm shift on what is possible for crypto in the region and what that looks like. And you'll see the space when you come. But I actually think this is like I'm a big fan of plurality. I'm a big fan of so long as it's not like cannibalizing or competitive, but actually just like incredibly supportive. I think this is super exciting, and I really don't believe that will be the case whatsoever. So this is just I want to see more of this. I want to see like more activations of builders locally. I want to see more people gathering and building things. Like there's the story of Casa Voltaire, for example. There was this very small house in Buenos Aires in the neighborhood of Palermo, which is where a whole bunch of amazing businesses like Decentraland and Open Zeppelin and Moon Wallet and so forth all came out of one house, right? So I think like we need more gatherings of that sort.
Yeah, let's make that happen in Mexico.
Yeah.
So amazing, dude. What are you up to next week?
Just locking in, bro. Locking in, and yeah, that's it. We are just continuing to grow and expand, and so I can't complain. And how about you? What's coming up for you?
I think that next week we have a big protocol upgrade in Bando, so that's gonna be really exciting. Also, we are launching some new initiatives in Espacio Crypto, and yeah, I don't know, cooking, keep growing. Frontera, we are really long here. So, dude, thank you for another great episode, and see you along. Subscribe to the
Let's go.
newsletter, and thank you
And
for coming,
Frontera
Push.
10 for the stablecoin conference.
Frontera 10 for the Stablecoin Conference. See you all in August. It's going to be really exciting. And thank you. Take care.
Ciao.